Meantime, President Obama threatening to veto a bill that would require him to actually follow the law. The GOP-backed measure would allow Congress to sue the president in federal courts for arbitrarily changing or refusing to enforce federal laws. The White House Office of Management and Budget saying in a statement on administration policy, quote, Congress may not assign such power to itself, nor may it assign to the courts the task of resolving such generalized political disputes, end quote. Congressman Trey Gowdy of South Carolina is the lead sponsor of the measure.
Mr. Speaker, that is a lot of power. What are we to do when that amount of power is not enough? What are we to do when this president or any president decides to selectively enforce a portion of a law and ignore other portions?
Tony Saig is a Fox News contributor. Bernard Whitman is a former Bill Clinton pollster and Democratic strategist. All right, guys. Tony, does he have a point?
He certainly does. Look, this is not a conversation I think anybody really wanted to have, or a point we wanted to get to, but it's something that the president has brought onto himself, because even as liberal scholars of law and the Constitution have said, like Jonathan Turley, this president has gone well beyond any precedent in circumventing Congress and expanding executive authority. And the president's power in the separation of powers, where we have checks and balances, is to enforce the laws of the land, not to do so selectively. And Congress, up until this point, has not had to go to this extent, but we're seeing a greater expansion of this president's power being unchecked.
Well, there have been 30-some changes to Obamacare in and of itself, just one law, Bernard. I mean, I realize that it's, on some people's minds, ridiculous to think that you could sue the president in federal court because he's continually changing the law, but do you agree with the fact that we're not really standing by the Constitution in the way in which it was written?
No. In fact, the Supreme Court would disagree with that argument. They ruled almost 20 years ago in Heckler versus Cheney that the administration has broad authority to use all sorts of various tools as long as they believe that they're fulfilling their statutory obligations, which is number one. Number two problem with this law is that, in fact, it does create a problem with separation of powers. Congress has no standing because their job is to legislate, the president's job is to execute, the courts is to adjudicate. There has to be standing. Someone has to be harmed. Congress can't say we were harmed because they don't have any standing in the matter. And third, this is not going to solve one problem, create one job, send one kid to college, get one tax code rewritten.
The president has made it very clear that he's going to pull out his pen and his paper for the next 3 years, so it doesn't seem like he's afraid. And he said he's going to veto this law, Tony.
Look, and this is not a charge just being made, Gretchen, by the way, from the right. The ACLU has made a similar charge, as has the New York Times. The president's exceeded any reasonable limitation to executive power. That's why we're having this conversation. And executive orders and executive authority are limited. Now, it could be challenged again, and that's what Trey Gowdy is basically bringing to the table. The reality is this bill will never pass the Senate, so the president will never have to veto it. But it's a conversation that we've been brought to not just because of Obamacare, but think about other policies, immigration policy, which the president has selectively gone after, creating basically cap and trade through fiat versus actual codifying through legislation.
Bernard, would you feel the same way if a Republican was the president right now?
Look, I think the problem is that we don't have a partner in Congress because Speaker Boehner doesn't have control over the Republican conference, and therefore the president doesn't have a negotiating partner in Congress to come up with sensible solutions to solve the nation's problems.
Wait a minute.
Which is
so now it's John Boehner's fault? Wait a minute.
Which is what the country is demanding. And ultimately, the president...
Isn't the leader of the free world supposed to have the capability? I mean, I would think Republican, Democrat, or Independent, I would think they would have the capability to be able to cross the aisle and have a conversation and try and do a negotiation. What you're saying is that can't happen anymore, so he has to use his pen and paper.
He doesn't have anyone to negotiate with, and so therefore he's got to execute his authority on behalf of the American people.
Well, how did other presidents figure out how to negotiate?
Because they have a partner in government that controls the Congress.
President Obama has been revealed as a very one-sided, my way or the highway type of person. Bill Clinton was able to work across the aisle, as was Ronald Reagan and most successful presidents. This is a president who, in the first 2 years of his presidency, had complete control of this government, had no interest in working with Republicans.
2 years of his presidency, the
Democrats will now blame Republicans for not working with President Obama.
The Republicans' response was, we don't like it, we're going to shut down the government and send everybody home. That's been your guys' strategy.
And this is why we debate these topics.
Let's go.
President Ted Cruz. Will President Ted Cruz shut down his own government? That's what I want to know.
As you guys leave the studio today, continue the discussion, please, because it's been very fiery. I appreciate it, guys.
Thanks, Gretchen. Thanks, Gretchen.